Hello everyone, and this is my very first attempt at creating a rack of tanks for Caridina shrimp. Pretty excited about this. We're starting the cycling process, and what I'm going to show you guys in this video is how we got to where we are now. So let's go back. I already showed you guys the air and the water stuff, so let's go back to the day I started setting up these tanks. So at this point, the rack itself has been built. The tanks are up and painted. I have the air system set up and water lines ran to each tank individually. 3 10-gallon tanks on the bottom and 3 20-gallon tanks on top. First thing to do was test the water lines and make sure nothing leaked. You can see the tanks have a little bit of water in there. That's all good. Awesome. And yes, I'm aware. One of the 10-gallon tanks is a rimless. I kind of wanted to try rimless. I never had a rimless tank before. So that's that. One's a rimless. So these tanks will be using UGF box filters, which means under gravel filter. And the soil is Bright Wells Rio Escurio. I'm trying to do exactly the same type of setup as I did in my first successful setup that I had with my fancy tigers. And hey, would you look at that? We have water and soil in the tank at the same time for the first time. So while we will be using the under gravel filter boxes in this tank, you also really want to have a sponge filter in each tank. And I've been wanting to try these Aquarium Co-op little sponge filters. I really like the water direction on the output of it. And after getting these up and running, I gotta say, these are pretty nice filters. The best sponge filters I've ever used. I like them a lot. So then we have the first Aquarium Co-op sponge filter set up with water dribbling in the tank. And let me tell you, this takes a long time to do. So while tanks are filling, you got plenty of time to go around and do the other tanks, which is what I'm doing now. You can see me in the background flying around in hyper motion, getting everything set up, running air lines, setting in the other sponge filters, finishing up the UGF boxes, and yeah, and slowly the water drips in. And here you can see that first tank is still filling up. Here you can see the rest of the tanks. All the filters are set up, boxes, the sponge filters, air lines ran, water lines already been run. So now we're just waiting for water to fill up, and it takes a long time. And would you look at that? There's enough water in there to start seeing something happening. I wait and I wait and I wait. So when I initially filled these tanks up, I made sure every tank was full with only RODI water. So all the tanks got filled up first, and then I remineralized. So all the tanks right here right now, all they have in it is RODI water. And you can take a look here. Here's the first 10-gallon tank, all the way filled up. Look at that thing. Ooh, looking like a professional shrimp tank now. Ha! And then here's the next 10-gallon dripping in, and the next 10-gallon dripping in. Again, this takes a long time. It took 3 days because I didn't want to let the RODI unit run while I was asleep, because I don't want to risk flooding the house in case one of these float valves messes up or overflow the reservoir. So while I was awake, there's 2 days from the time I woke up in the morning to the time I went to bed at night for this thing to fill, and a little bit the first day. Oh, hey, would you just look at that? We got all three 10-gallon tanks filled up and running with RODI water. These bubbles, I'm not sure. I've never had new setups with this many bubbles. And look, something's happening finally to one of the 20s. I thought the 10s took a while to fill up off the RODI unit. The 20s took a long time. Day 3 of filling tanks. And look at that. The finish line is in sight. We have stuff happening in all 6 tanks, all 3 20 gallons, and all 10 gallons. Whew. I sat around and watched tanks drip for a long time, making sure nothing happened here. And we finally reached the finish line. All the tanks have soil, the filter set up, the sponge filter set up, and are completely full of RODI water. And at this point, I was fine-tuning the air system. Now, at first, I just left all the valves open, and there wasn't real good flow on the UGF boxes. But then I come to find out the thing I like about these Aquarium Co-op sponge filters is they don't take very much air at all to run. So I was able to turn the air down on all those, and then I had plenty of air left after that on all the UGF boxes. So this is when I remineralized the tanks. I remineralized all the tanks to TDS using salty shrimp to a TDS of 130 to 140 parts per million. So then I used Bacter AE in each tank, and this will help get biofilm started and get the tank seasoning started. So this is what it looks like immediately after adding the Bacter AE. It just clouds it all up and it covers every surface in the tank, and that starts the biofilm process. Now, Bacter AE is pretty potent stuff, so you want to go easy on it. In the 10 gallons, I used about a half a scoop, in the 20s, a full scoop. So now it's time to start making these new shrimp tanks look a little bit more like shrimp tanks. So the next step is to pull some moss from my successful Fancy Tiger tank. Now this moss here is called spiky moss. I bought it as spiky moss when I started this tank as tissue culture. So I've managed to keep my Caridina tank and this moss completely 100% snail free. And I think that's pretty important with Caridina shrimp tanks. Now, some people may disagree. Some people like snails. I welcome snails in my Neo tanks. But with these tanks, I run them completely different than my Neo tanks because really you have to. The soft water makes things much more difficult versus the hard water in the Neo tanks. And so this moss is completely snail free, and it grows good in my soft water. You can see some of it's kind of faded out, but I think some of it's getting shaded out. Some of the dead bits is like old leaf carcasses that have settled in there and it's grown up around. But we got, this moss is pretty awesome. I really like it. It don't grow anything like it does in the, well, this moss doesn't grow like the pilo moss I use in my Neo tanks. Just a few sprigs I got from the tissue culture, and in 9 or 10 months, this is what it turned into. It was pretty cool seeing all the shrimp in this tank with some of the moss pulled out. They all went crazy, eating all the bits and stuff floating around that come up out of the moss. So this is pretty cool to see this tank and all the shrimp active and thriving and doing good, and I hope we can achieve the same in these new tanks. So now let's put some moss in these new tanks, and you'll see there's some leaves in this tank. I also am using Indian almond leaves in these tanks. They're good to age and they're good to keep in the tanks while the tank is running. The shrimp love it. They love to snack on it. It's beneficial to the water, helps biofilm, all kinds of good things in these Caridina shrimp tanks with leaves. And now we have something that resembles shrimp tanks. Every tank is set up with a little bit of moss. Got some Bacteria E to get the seasoning process started, getting these tanks ready for shrimp. I am so excited, I can't wait. But there's one more step we've got to do before we can add our shrimp. So you see, just little bits of moss. So for the next week or so, I will be doing a full round of stability to get these going. This is how we cycle these tanks. Now, I'll probably do that and then give it a couple weeks and then add some test shrimp. Because see, the good thing about this Brightwell soil is that it does not give off ammonia like many of these other shrimp soils do. And so we don't really have to worry, because if you use stuff like ADA, that stuff's going to leach ammonia for like 2 months. And so that's why I like to use Brightwell. And so we will add some of the, in 2 or 3 weeks, we'll add some of the lesser ones that I plan on being culls from the Fancy Tigers. And I think it'll be all right. And we'll add 1 or 2 shrimp in each tank. And then, if all goes well and the shrimp are good and none of these tanks look like they're going to be shrimp killers, then it's time to order some new shrimp and transfer over the rest of the Fancy Tigers into their tanks. So, right now I am thinking this middle 20-gallon tank will be a cull tank. I am thinking this 20-gallon tank will be the Fancy Tiger grow out tank. And then this tank will be a grow out tank for the new shrimp I'm getting. I think this will be the breeder tank for the new shrimp. This will be a breeder tank for the new shrimp. And this will probably be the breeder tank for the Fancy Tigers. I can't wait to get some shrimp in these tanks, but that'll be a while. And there are also some small minor changes that I'll be making with the UGF boxes, and I'll go over more about the auto water top off system in the next video. So here we are about 2 or 3 days after they were filled up and everything was added and moss added and all that. And it looks like there's already biofilm and stuff starting to form on the walls. The leaves are starting to sink. Some are still floaty. But I really, really want to give a huge shout out to Leon at Shrimp Mania and Mark at Mark Shrimp Tanks. Those guys have really held my hand throughout the process of this, because, you know, I'm lucky to have friends that have done these things way more than I have, and know way more than me when it comes to these Caridina shrimp tanks. I'm just a simple neo farmer, man. I had a lot to learn, and there's, like I said, there's still going to be some changes here, but nothing too major. Mostly what you see is what you get. These tanks right now are set up exactly like my 10-gallon. The 10 gallons are set up exactly the same way my first 10-gallon was successful. I think that's the key to shrimp keeping and keeping aquariums in general. You find something that works and you stick to it. I mean, I always said if I figured out a way to get these guys thriving in a tank, I would set up a rack. Well, I've had that tank thriving, and now the time's come where that tank's about exhausted itself, and I have a tank full of shrimp, and it's time to sort them out and divide them up into breeders and grow outs and culls. Now I have the tanks for that and tanks to add some really new rad shrimp. So stick around and come back. I'll be updating these videos as stuff happens to them, but if you're here mainly for Neos, don't worry. because the Neos ain't stopping. This is just a little side deal I want to try to see if I can do successfully. So if you're like, oh man, I'm here to see some Neos. Well, the Neos will still be coming. They will be coming. But this takes a lot of time when you do this, so, and I'm making videos and sharing what I do. So this is what the videos have been about lately. If you're here for Neos, sorry. But there'll be more and lots of Neo stuff coming up soon. There's even going to be a new Neo rack, believe it or not. So, just want to thank you guys for checking it out. Bye.